What's going on, advocates? Welcome back to Equity with me, Reginald A. Howard, your host for today's conversation. Man, today's conversation was just I want to use a different word, but I'm going to use this. It was a blast, man. I got a chance to have my guys on, my friends, since '09, so it's a legit at least a decade in at bare minimum, but on going forward. They both been on the platform individually before, but this was their first. No, this wasn't their first time. Maybe second or third time together. And I asked them, of course, in an attempt to like expand the platform, expand the conversation, if we can have these conversations more frequently, not just because I want to create content. um One, it get a chance for me to kick it with my guys, and because again, I'm in a relationship, married, father. They are single, or dating gentlemen. I don't want to say single because I don't know what their situation is, but they're a dating gentleman. And they are out there and they don't have kids, and they are living their lives. And so this gives me a chance to bring them into my world, or collaborate on worlds and have conversations. And plus we have good conversation, of course. They have regular lives just like we all do, so I'm never going to do anything to put them in a predicament to expose themselves or expose anyone else. But I do believe it's a way to have great conversations that we have off air online, and create great content that could be beneficial to the people. So again, can't thank those brothers enough, especially my guy Bril, man. He's one of those individuals that's again not a man of many words, but he's very potent is a word that I'll use for the type of information he provides when he does decide to speak. And man, he hit me with a bombshell live on the conversation. And I appreciate him sharing that vulnerability because he's not a vulnerable person majority of the times. If you listen to his a previous episode, his individual episode, I think he was like episode 2 or 3 of the podcast. He talked about like not having his dad, and not really going into details about it too much, and not really expressing himself. And I'm sure of it. Actually, I am sure, 100% sure, because the women he's dated in the past have expressed it to me, like he doesn't really open up about a lot of things. And I won't spoil it, but he opens up something major within the episode, so you got to tune in to see it. And shout out my guy Rich, always blessing with me. Rich is the cool guy. He's not gonna do too much on the platform. He's not gonna have the conversation, but we have like in-depth reasoning conversations. And so I gotta find a way to get that out of him without getting him because he's a very aware of when the camera's on. He's very aware when a picture's being taken, and so he kind of curates his likeness, for lack of a better word, to that conversation or what is happening in the moment. So once I can get him past like, and we just having a regular conversation without the cameras and being respectful of conversations of individuals that we talking about in the conversations, I think he's gonna be great as well. And he's gave it up on the individual episode, so I appreciate him. I think he's the third time, fourth time. I lost count over the years, and he's been on the platform repeatedly. So you'll hear from them guys more often as well. So like always when we do these type of topics, I like to pick out some of the big moving, I don't want to say moving, but the big themes of the episode and big content that spoke out to me and wanted to get a little deeper into it. One of the major ones I kind of started off with because I we hadn't talked about it, and I wanted to go into it and having those conversations because I know I'm feeling it on my end in a different way. Being a father, being a husband, being in these spaces of like, man, we are getting old, and we're getting old in a sense of not like we're 50, 60, 70, whatever the case may be, because that's a different age bracket of old, and I would never disrespect our elders and be like, all right, we're old, but we are learning that we're not young anymore. That's probably a better way of stating that. Like, we are not the teens, we're not in the 20s, where we're I use a quote a lot of times where I'm old enough to know better, but young enough to still relate. I'm almost transitioning into like I'm just old enough to know better, like where we may not be able to relate no more. Some of the TV shows, some of the music, some of those different things. Now, I also don't condemn it, but I just don't like get it, and it's kind of like, all right, that's when you get stuck in the era and you go back to your favorite songs from that era, your favorite albums, or your favorite movies or favorite. That's where I'm at now. Right now, when I put on a TV show or a movie, I'm watching something that I like growing up, as opposed to what's being put out as product. So get in that context, I was doing some research about like millennials getting old, and I found a article from the New York Post that was on November 22nd. No, November 2nd, 2022. So it's fairly recent, within the last 6 to 7 months. And so the title of the article, and if I find the author, I'll make sure to give you shout out. It says by SWNS. So shout out to you. It's not coming up about what your name is, so I'm sorry, but shout out to SWNS, whoever that is. Maybe they do that on purpose, so that way they can protect people's identity. But it say, what's the title of the article? This is the age when the average American realized they are aging poor. Oh, maybe it wasn't this article. Hold on, I'm sorry, because I've gotten some feedback about like some of these articles in the front of the podcast can be draining. So I've been doing a better job of vetting some of these articles and making sure that they're related to what we're talking about. But the article that I did bring up, and I can't find it at this moment, so I'm gonna kind of spitball it for a little bit. Oh, it's CNN. I'm sorry. Let me give it to CNN. Um, and come on, load up with me. I know we rolling this live. We rolling, baby. So it was CNN, and it was saying millennials like me turn 40 this year. And all right, so it's still in the same vein. Shout out to Catherine E. I don't want to mess your name up. So shout out to Catherine of CNN, and she produced or they produced the article December 31st, 2022. So that's fairly recent. And make sure I can copy this down so I can have it for the upload. But she was talking about millennials turning 40, and that even sounds like ironic. I actually was just talking to my sister recently, and and I always say, like, when we were younger, she's about 5, 6 years older than me. When we were younger, those 5, 6 years gap seemed like it was so far, but now that we're older, it seems like we're in alignment. I guess when you become a full grown adult, like it starts to become a little bit more, in sync with one another. Um, but it says, millennials like me are turning 40 this year, and everything you think you know about us is wrong. So it's more so debunking some myths about many millennials, and we'll go through it, and I'll try to, fast forward a little bit as well. Um, she said, and then again, I'm summarizing for those who are listening and can't read the article, and I always provide the article for those who want to, like, get the full context of the article. But it says, then I realized something that surprised me. I'm a millennial, as many of the people I know and love. I long assumed my friends and classmates were older and wiser than this group, but when I started covering demographics for CNN, I learned that 1981 is the birth year many researchers identify as the beginning of the millennial generation. So I'll stop right there, and I didn't even think millennial considered 1981, but whatever. So this person was born in 82, and they turned 40, like a lot of other millennials in that age bracket. And it's a notable milestone and a good opportunity to point out something important. The myth of millennial is very different from the reality that many of us are living. And so one of the myths is that we only think about ourselves, self-centered. We only worried about what we got going on. And so this individual shares a story that back in May, her husband went out of town on a trip, and she was solo parenting their infant daughter for the first time. And she said to herself, I can do this. She thought, as she reassured herself, it won't be that hard. Then one night, her daughter first two teeth started to poke through her gums after watching on the baby as she watched on the baby monitor. And the daughter was in extremely pain for a few minutes, but it seemed like an eternity, because I can bet where she was up all night. And the mother ended up holding her in her arms for the rest of the night to comfort her. In the scheme of tough things as a new parents go through, this was nothing major, but I was exhausted and so was she. I can only imagine. Again, I was a young parent. Uh what I had my kid 20 years old, 21 years old. So imagine not really being fully an adult and having to take care of a kid. And I didn't even realize how young we were until like my mid-20s. And I'm like, man, some of my kids, my friends are not even, again, the friends that's on this episode that you all will listen to, they don't have kids. And so I had my kids extremely young. I should have probably been starting to think about having my first kid around this age, because now I'm fully mature enough to handle the responsibilities that come with it. And so, in the scheme of tough things new parents can go through, this was nothing major, but she was exhausted, and so was the baby. As the sun rose, they sat blurry-eyed on the floor of her room together. Their pajamas was covered in cherry flavored children's Tylenol. God knows we know about that over here in the Howard household. Like, you just, for some reason, they spit it out, it missed their mouth. And she even says that's in the article that her daughter spit it out when she tried to give it to her the night before. But for a few minutes that morning, they were playing and she was smiling, and it seemed like they had made it through a marathon and finally could relax. Man, that's such a beautiful feeling. I know many of times that we went through so many different stages with our children, me and my wife, and they'll give you that smile, and you can't help but smile, because it's like, yo, you done pissed me off this whole night, you done made me mad, you done made me go through all of this, and then you just gonna look at me and smile and think everything okay. But it is because they don't know what they just did. They just had to go with what they're going through. So that's cute to see that other individuals go through that in order. So now, moving forward in the article, she says, then my phone rang with devastating news, unexpected news. My mom had died that morning. She was shaken up, stunned, and sobbing. She looked at her daughter playing beside her. There were so many questions she wished she could ask her mom about how to take care of her, which I think she means her daughter. Instead of calling my mom that day to ask for advice, I was racing to Michigan to help plan her funeral. Wow. Suddenly, the same year I became a mother had become the same year when I lost a mother. It was less than 2 months before my 40th birthday. Millennials famously appeared on a New York Times article, and the article said the me generation. But for her and many others, what it really means to be a millennial these days is something quite different. We are the newest sandwich generation, feeling the growing pressure between raising young children and caring for aging family members, or at least wanting to take care for them, given all they've done to care for us, but struggling to know what to do. Man, we are in that right now. I was listening to something. I forgot. It was either a podcast or watching an interview, and they were talking about like taking care of your parents, and they become more of a headache than your kids. And it's like, yo, you got to teach them. You want to look at them as like the uh person of I don't want to say influence, but they resorted back to kids basically. Um, and then you just realizing like, oh man, you're a human and you have needs and certain things. And I just think that's like, it's the weirdest feeling in the world, because you used to that person, you looking up to that person, and not saying you don't look up to them no more, but you looking at that person for the answers. Like, I used to call my mom for bus routes, and now it's like, all right, now she may be calling me for a ride somewhere, and it just like the weird, it's the strangest transition, and it's something that I don't think many talk about, where you're just kind of thrust in that position, I guess, like anything in life, and you just have to deal with it. Um, the other thing that I wanted to say in regards to that as well, they talk about how I was watching another interview or research or whatever the case may be, where our parents and definitely grandparents, but our parents are also a part of this. I'm trying to think of a good word. They are part of they are now in a generation where their friends are dying. So they are in their 50s, 60s. Well, even in this millennial, we talking about millennials being 40, so 60s, 70s. And that's grandparent age for me, but their friends are dying. So now they're calling you with another person that's died, or somebody that they grew up with, a sibling, or with that, whatever the case may be. And then not even realizing the emotional toll that that takes on them, that they are ultimately facing their demise as well, and not realizing that they could be, you know, feeling lonely or feeling I'm trying to think of a good word, because I actually want to talk about that to an older individual, just to see, you know, what that is like, because you hear about the old folks homes and people going in there and really having that community, but when you start to live outside of that, you lose your community. And I can only imagine being in an old folks home, and that's just like a norm, like people are just they are the older population, so you're every day, I guess, with in a brighter note, would be a little bit more precious, because you know that this person may not be here tomorrow. They might not even be in their right state of mind tomorrow. And so, you know, just realizing that our elder generation is having it tough as well, because they are in a transitional stage where they are losing their loved ones that they grew up and built relationships with. But going back to the article, um, all right, let me go with millennials like me are too busy juggling our responsibilities at work and caring for others at home to be as self-assessed as we were portrayed all these years. Like every generation before us, we're growing up, but the myth of millennials have been long off the mark. For years, for example, headlines have blared that millennials aren't having kids. The reality, though, is more complicated. Women are having children later, but when we look at completed fertility, we haven't seen that they're necessarily having fewer children, just starting later in life. Which again, like I said, my friends are I have friends that started early and I have friends that started later, but I don't think there's like a if I say the ratio is like it's half and half, like more some I got friends that, you know, they had kids like 19, 18, and maybe even earlier. I remember being in high school was a guy that had his baby, but also again, no friends that they don't have any kids and it don't look like they're having any time within the next few years. So I can say that I believe that it is that where we're still having babies and we just probably are focusing more on our careers when we do it. Um, okay, back to the article. Hold on, I'm trying to skim, trying to make sure. So Jack Dorsey said the oldest millennials tells us that they're being pulled in three different directions. They're taking care of a child or children. They're frequently taking care of parent or parents, and they're trying to navigate their jobs. And so that pull, there's a lot going on there, and it's a very stressful time. I couldn't agree even more. Um, Past generations have entered in this stage too, but this time around, one thing is different. What's new is to do it at 40 years old with so many people having very young children. Many middle-aged millennials like me are feeling this pressure even in our most joyous moments. Um, how would this shape the kind of parents become? We approach jobs. All right, so going into the next myth, we all share the same experience. So there's a myth out there that millennials all share the same experience. It's not necessarily surprising that for years I didn't realize I was one of the more than 72 million millennials in the United States. That's the other thing we don't talk about as well. We are making up majority of the workforce now. And I one of these days in these podcasts, I want to get into a what do you call that, AI conversation, but I'll do it in an artfully way by interviewing someone. But the workforce is now having to I was actually just talking to a colleague about this yesterday, and we are going to have to adapt into our a new social style of thinking about work. Whereas we want you in office, we want you to stay home, stay in, and I can monitor you. And it's like millennials learned once the pandemic. I think everybody learned, but I think millennials were always that moving the ecosystem of how jobs formerly was. I know my friend Bril talks about it within this episode about job hopping, and we go into a little deeper, but we are reshaping the job force because we are now we're mostly making up the job forces, and the employers have to adapt to that statistic. Some experts are arguing that analyzing our society using generation labels is just about as reliable as scientific or hold on, let me reread that because that's funny. They was taking a jab. Some experts argue that analyzing our society using generational labels is just about as reliable and scientific as using your horoscope. They contend that many more factors can shape someone's life than the year they were born, race, and socioeconomic status, for example. And when you label and analyze a whole group of people without digging much into those details, important nuances about social change end up getting lost. All right, skipping through some of that, going down the article. Some of my younger millennial friends who are in their late 20s have looked at me wide-eyed when I talk about videotapes I watched growing up, or what it was like hearing that delightful high-pitched staticky tone that meant your home computer was oh so slowly connecting to the internet via dial-up. Major events that shaped our world happened at at very different points in our lives. I was in college on 9/11. Yeah, no, we years off because I was in like grade school. They were in elementary school. Yep. I was in grad school and looking for work during the Great Recession. They were still living with their parents. Yep. Um, some argue that the split between us is so big that older millennials like me should actually get their own category, which I believe too, sometimes combined with younger members of Generation X. Yeah, it's a lag year. And I know everyone, there can't be a perfect line of like the generation gaps, but yeah, there's some of that 40-year-old language is irrelevant to me. Um, Okay, let me skip through some of this to make even things more confusing. There are no concrete definition of when the millennial generation begins and ends. Um, the 1991 book credited with introducing the term states that millennials were born in 1982. Describe millennials between 1981 and 1996. Okay. Other researchers has floated around theories that millennials were born in the late 1970s. What? And up to the early 90s. Now we're not even gonna put that in there. So we're gonna go in the following. Let's end this off. Now that I know I'm a millennial, I'm not ready to give up the label just yet. I bet you won't, especially if you're an older millennial. But I do want to help set the record straight and shed these persistent stereotypes about our generation. Full disclosure, I do not love avocado. Okay. All right. So myth 3, we don't want to own homes. I just had a conversation with my mother about this, about buying a house. And I'm leaning more towards leasing than buying. I think leasing allows flexibility, even though I don't want to say waste money, but you utilize a lot of money. But I don't like being stuck anywhere. I do want to own a home, but literally own a home and rent it out to somebody. So that way, if I need to, have somewhere to be stable for a few years, I can, but I also have the flexibility to move in a lease and utilize the amenities. So, going to myth 3, the question that haunts my husband and I, again going back to the article, popping up in conversation with friends, loved ones, and even strangers: are you thinking of buying a house? For years, that milestone didn't matter much to either of us. They house sat and rented and focused their energy and finances on doing things they enjoy together in their free time. Likewise, but now that they have a daughter, buying a house feels like something they should have been done already. It also feels like something that is increasingly out of reach as housing costs remain high and mortgage rates skyrocket. That the truly speaking facts. They are not alone in feeling like they're behind and taking a big step. People are really stressed out about not being homeowners. One thing I try to communicate to them: it's okay to rent. You're buying yourself flexibility. I just said that. You're buying yourself time to figure out what you want to do, what you want your next 20 years or next 10 years to look like. Despite frequent handwriting, oh, let's run it back. Because I never heard this term. That's what's throwing me off. Despite frequent hand wringing over millennials not buying homes, one reason for American housing crunch, he says, is that more millennials are now entering the house market. It has gotten harder to buy a house if you don't already own one, which make it really hard to buy a house if you're in your 20s or 30s and have rented for years. Older millennials aged 32 to 41 made up a quarter of home buyers this year, according to the Realtors report. Many millennials are what? But as CNN has reported, many millennials are worse off than their parents. And millennials are less likely to own homes at this point in their lives, than previous generation. Well, that's news to me. I would love to see who you surveyed on that. It's gotten harder to buy a house if you don't already own one. I read that already. It was a quote. Da, 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 da. It's really hard to think about getting married, having kids, moving out with roommates, and making any of these transitions with housing market like we have now. That's a fact. Because every time me and my wife look at the housing market, it's like, you know what, we'll just go in a better apartment until we can find like the right time to go. I think the pandemic, when the housing was in like craziness, we probably should have got one, but we also were in craziness. Um, my husband and I are not trying to be too overwhelmed by this daunting reality. That's a fact. We're visiting open houses on most weekends and planning to meet with the mortgage broker soon. By this time next year, hopefully, we'll be living in a home that we own. And it's always hard because if it was me and my wife, we probably would lease forever. But when you got kids and you want to provide some stability for them, that also it creates a different narrative, and I discussed it when I was talking to my friends in this episode about them moving and taking that leap of faith and having that flexibility to, just move into a different state, and just have that flexibility which you should have at that age to be able to move around. Again, I talked about it earlier with the jobs, and it's going into myth number 4, but we want to have that flexibility to be able to, work the way we want to work in our comfortable environment that we see fit. um so going into myth number 4, it says we don't take our job seriously and don't stay in them very long. Again, bro talked about this in this episode. um Invited to how many million generally say, okay, so Jason Dorsey, he asks a question when he's invited to visit companies to speak with their employees: how many of you are millennials? Generally, he says just a few hands timidly go up. They're expecting it to be negative because that's unfortunately what we've been framed as. Well, hold on. They're expecting it to be negative because that's unfortunately what we've been framed as for the last 15 years. The Reporter said didn't pull any punches in the piece's injunction. A new breed of American worker is about to attack everything you hold sacred, from giving orders to your starch white shirt and tie. I just said that earlier. We ain't going for nothing. We roll out, and bro said it too. And within the episode, he went on to warn that the workplace has become a psychological battlefield and the millennials have the upper hand, describing a generation that can multitask, talk, walk, listen to, and type and text. They talked about us like we were space aliens. I never even looked at it, but we do. A few people have told me like, you doing like 6, 7 things at one time, but I think if we just used to multitasking like that. Hold on. Problematic, but now with the clarity and hindsight, anxious older generation worries about naive young generation ensuring everything could have been in whatever the case may be. It says our generation came up under a microscope, unlike any generation before us. All the criticism of millennials, we said it about every generation, but it was just amplified by the internet and social media. I can believe that. Um Dorsey says that during his presentations, details about millennials often surface and surprise many people in the room. It turns out they're the largest generation in the company's workforce. I bet. He finds that many employees have bought into the stereotype and assume millennials were slackers or flakes, but actually, he says millennials are often among the company's most successful workers and managers. And by the end of his presentation, all of them are raising their hands. Um, Kimbrough tells me millennials have been staying in the job for just as long as previous generation. That's a good fact. Obviously, people early in their career shift jobs at a higher rate than people later in their careers. Yeah, we're younger, so we're supposed to be finding our path and navigating that. I don't know why that was like weaponized against younger people when it comes to like job hopping. We're supposed to in our early 20s, but we're trying to navigate and find our career path and something we're going to stick into. I can say for myself, I've stuck in or sticking, what's the word? Whatever. I've stuck with the jobs that I'm having now, or the opportunities I'm having now, way longer than I've done before, with 3 months, 6 months, all those different things and before. So you're supposed to, when you're younger, why would we want to be locked in, or why is it frowned upon if we're job hopping, and if we're locked in at a job at 19 and have been there 10 years, how will we have the bevy of experience that we employers hope to have when we grow up? So again, talking about equity, that's a key component. Obviously, people in a career that the millennials have not been uniquely more likely to job hop earlier in their careers. Actually, they're switching jobs less. There actually been a big decline in job switching since about 2000. That's good to know. It's been more than 12 years since I switched jobs, and I'm hoping to stay in this one for many more. Like me, many of my friends have been working for their employers for more than a decade. Wow. So if it's more than a decade, that means you would have had started in your 30s if you're 40. Others would have stayed but found themselves the victims of corporate restructuring. Um, repeatedly weather economic crisis is an important piece for millennial story too. So many times millennials tell me that they finally feel like they're on the right track, and then something happens that's beyond their control. Whew, ain't that the truth? You already know I talked about my transition. Myth 5, we are forever young. I have just recently come to that conclusion that we are not as young as we thought we were. I remember when and then going back to the article, I remember when my dad turned 40. The mere idea of it seemed ancient to me. His coworkers taped black crepe. Oh man, I don't know what that word. Crochet paper. I'm going to say some type of black paper around his photo and hung it around the office. I was 9 and gave him a framed poem I've written about how he shouldn't feel bad about getting old. The gears in your head are still turning, I wrote, and your brain is still works as far as I found. So yes, the idea that now somehow I'm 40 is something I'm still trying to wrap my head around. On most days, I still see myself as a young adult trying to find my way in this crazy and confusing world. But when I commiserate with my husband about our ever-growing list of weird aches and pains, and about how we really don't like going to loud restaurants, and about the way things used to be, I realize I'm not quite ancient, but I'm definitely more middle-aged than I rather care to admit. That's a fact. I'm starting to learn, like I'm leaning again. I said it earlier. I used to say I'm young enough to know better, but I'm old enough to know better, but young enough to still relate. I'm just old enough to know better. Still, when I first read last year that the oldest millennials are starting to turn 40, that detail jumped out at me. The concept seems so surprising. For so long, we've seen the same picture painted of millennials over and over. People talked about millennials as though as it's a universal term for young people. That's a fact, which is not. Sometimes when she looks at her daughter, this idea really sharpens it to focus. That's how I feel about when I see my sons. As I feel my age hurtling towards me like a ton of brick. Her daughter is so much younger than she was at this point in her parents' lives. Or put it another way, I'm already so much older than my parents were when they were raising me. I was nearly 39, so 9 years old when my daughter was born. My husband had just turned 41. When she graduates from high school and heads to college, we'll both be nearly 60. And if she waited as long as we did to have kids, if she decides that it's not right for her, we could be 80 when we become grandparents. That's funny. All right. Let's skim through some of this. Uh, now that I've seen these tiny, sweet, loving kids, all I want more time with them to hit pause, not on their growing and changing, but on me and the version of myself as a parent that I am right now. To pause the back and knee pain that grows along a little bit more sharply every year. To halt the gray hairs and the high cholesterol. To skip over the inevitable medical scares and exhaustion that seems to envelope more and more of my days. Um, da, 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 have been coming to terms with that, what it means to not be young anymore. That's I think that was a theme of the episode with the guys was like, yo, we're not young anymore. So a quote from this article is, my entire life, the cultural story has always been about our youth, and it's always been about us as this sort of young disruptive generation that was too spoiled, that had Arrested Development, I think that's a show that was upending family life, retirement, housing, and employment. We grown up seeing ourselves that way as the young upstarts and disruptors, as the people around whom culture and especially youth cultures are shaped. Of course, we're going to feel fed up about the fact that now we're getting middle age. Wow. Never thought of myself as middle age. I know we're on the younger side of middle age, but we are approaching middle age, and that is a scary thing to admit, that we are approaching age. Recently, I stopped by a bookstore with my daughter to pick up a few gifts. She's almost 18 months old now, and walking. And as soon as I put her down, she bounced over the magazine section where there were plenty of things to explore right at her eye level. Um, Mommy, she explained as she gleefully pointed out the cover of the magazine, pushed out the rat. A beaming brunette looked out from me with beneath the title that said, "Look great over 50." She does look pretty great, I thought to myself, but over 50, maybe my daughter was just sharing her joy in browsing the bookstore. Shortly, she couldn't think I was more than a decade older than I'm already am. But as she wandered around the magazine section for the next 20 minutes, she kept coming back with to that one, saying "mommy" every time. I almost corrected her. Oh, that isn't mommy. Was on the tip of my tongue when I realized it didn't matter. It doesn't matter if somehow she doesn't see me on that magazine cutter. Boy, my son told me the other day, like, "Hey, you as fat as Daddy Pig," and I ain't watched Pepper Pig, so I don't know what that mean, but I still feel like it was an offensive. Like, oh wait, I'm the dad with the bare belly now. Like, what's going on? When did this happen? There's so much I'm still trying to figure out. So much all of us millennials and non-millennials alike are still struggling with as we make our way through life. Um, the math is truly daunting, and as this year so painfully reminded me, we never know how much time we'll have with the ones we love. With all the uncertainty, there's one thing I know: my daughter and I are so lucky to be together right now, sharing an evening in the bookstore. Something I did with my parents, and something I've always dreamed of doing if I ever had a child of my own. As I watch her toddle down the aisles of the store, I feel so proud and happy and curious she seems to be. Her generation doesn't even have a name yet, or at least not one that we know will stick. No matter what we call them someday, I can't wait to see what they'll do. Great article, great article. Again, it was a lot of reminiscent of what me and my friends were talking about when we talk about getting older and getting toward a generation and becoming. We're losing hair, we're losing friends, we're losing opportunities, but we're also gaining some things. I'm gaining a family. As much as I talked about losing that camaraderie with my friends, and it may not be the same shape, I also gained brothers who understand, like, hey, I know where you at right now, King. So I'm gonna just support you. So yeah, maybe you can't hang out with the guys and do like the single lifestyle, but you can bring your wife and your kids and they can have just as much fun too. Which is very respectable. And just realizing that the time that we have on this earth is now. When we looked at it being invincible, and that we just had so much time in front of us. I think you all heard me go through a transition recently, but I think for myself, I'm learning too as an adulthood. I think I said it on my birthday. I said it earlier. This has just been a big year of transition. And I even said it about becoming a father. Like, and of course, I've been a father since 20, but I have really owned being a father as of late. And not like I'm the best dad in the world, but like, hey, um this needs to happen for your children, and you are the one that needs to make it happen. And I think I've never taken the severity of that situation into context. And so that's my spiel again, going in a little deeper on the topics. Hopefully you all will enjoy the conversation with me and my guys. Again, these are my real life friends, so listen with a different air as well, because they have elements of me that I'm not even aware of myself that they are able to speak on, because they've known me over a period of time. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. Until next time, deuces. What's going on, advocates? Welcome back to Equity with myself, Reginald A. Howard. And it's not just me today. I got a couple good returning guests, actually. This is Bril's second appearance. This will be Rich. I think you may be the only three-time repeater guest, which is congrats. I wish I had my little soundboard hooked up, but that's coming soon. Also, introducing them as my best friends, and we'll get into that because I just asked them this earlier this year. I don't know how we've been friends all these years. I'm like, oh, you guys are my best friends. Like, I just had to had to get that out. But I say that to say I reached out to my friends because, for one, I want to have expansive conversations. They were my first few guests, actually, first two guests probably, when I started this journey. But also, they don't know it yet, but I'll bring up old clips from them when they were younger and we did our interview, and see if they still have the same talking to your younger self, like, and seeing like, oh, what was that young guy talking about there? So that will come up. But also, I said I wanted to have these conversations quarterly, just as a way of tapping in, and checking in with each other, and having conversations. So without further ado, the Bacardi boys, Richard Good and Jabril Hart. How's it going, fellas? How you feeling?
Retired. Boys. I'm good,
I'm
man.
good.
I'm
We
good.
got Listen, these used to be filled with brown liquor. If y'all listen, I'm holding a glass in my hand, but now it's filled with a good old H2O. So, and I gotta warm them up, guys, of everybody that's listening, because when I first started this podcast, I was always looking for the I want to say, for lack of a better word, salacious things to pull out of the conversation. And now I've learned to just have great conversations to pull out, especially with my friends, and like knowing them, for lack of a better word, intimately. I want to have just like a genuine conversation. So, starting off, how you brothers doing? How was the weekend? Anybody can answer.
Okay. I'll go first. Weekend was pretty cool. Hung out with my cousin who was in town for the weekend. And I remember that I'm getting older. I'm getting older, so time to take a step back.
We're going to talk about that because I do have some questions. Not that in particular, but it's a topic that I wanted to bring and get you all opinion on. How about you, bro? How's your weekend going? I want to ask how was excursions, for lack of a better word, but I don't know if everyone's comfortable sharing how their excursion was or if they are allowed to. So,
Um, I don't know if I should. My weekend was cool.
okay.
Hung with friends, went out.
Okay.
Uh, it was cool. It was cool
Okay.
to PC weekend.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Okay. So, Rich, you brought up an interesting point, and I wonder if it's time to bring up your clip with that. Maybe. You said you're no, that's too heavy. How did you know you're getting old?
Well, the most concrete thing I have coming up. My birthday is I'm not sure when it's airing. My birthday is the 29th of this month. So that's a thing. I'll be 32.
Mm-hmm.
God willing. And yeah, hanging out with cousins, doing stuff that we used to do when he was 20, like when drinking a lot or whatever. Realize we're not there anymore. So it's a whole bunch of just taking time to drink more water than anything nowadays. That's
Mm. So the reason why I asked that, because one of the topics that I wanted to bring up was something about your manhood that you have to grieve. And what I meant by that is like, for example, for y'all may not know this, and I, again, being self deprecating or just being honest, like, I had to grieve that our friendships wouldn't be the same once I became a father and a husband. And I'm like, I still want to hang out. Shoot, I was with bro when we was out DC, and I'm like, yo, I want to float. And it's like, nigga, you can't. Oh, see that? Look, y'all bring it up, bro. You can't float no more. And meaning like just being able to like navigate the room and move around. But again, I was out with my wife with them, and luckily that's why I bring my wife with me, so that way those old versions don't tap in. But I say that to say, grieving those relationships, like, damn, shit, I joke with y'all, but I meant it. I'm like, y'all, I feel like I'm kicked out the group chat, and not in the sense of like y'all personally did it, but y'all are dating, for lack of better words, and y'all are not married, I'll use those terminology. And I'm pretty sure y'all are more so being respectful of our relationship than wanting to include certain things because it's a different lifestyle being that. So I use myself as an example of like, that's why I bring that up as what's something that y'all had to grieve going into like manhood of like, yo, I'm losing that.
I think the same thing that you just said. Relationships change, and I know like me and you had a conversation with like at 30, you feel like that's when it's like a fork in the road.
Mm-hmm.
People go separate ways. A lot of times it's either settling in the life you have or still kind of continuing your life and trying to progress. I feel like that's the path. So just in general with friendships, I think that happens. Or specifically, I think we all acknowledge where each other is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think when I talk to you, usually if I tell you to come out, I'm like, oh yeah, bring bring your lady, bring the kids, and you be like, wait, what? So like I'll always acknowledge things like that. Now, whether you bring them or not, that's up to you. But I'll at least create the space that everybody could come. So it's a different relationship, but I think it's important to accept it and then just live with that new relationship.
Rich?
Both of your point, I think relationships change over time, right? As everything does, everything evolves. Conversations and relationships are the same, but they're just it's a different version of a relationship now, right? We all met when we were 18, 19, 30? We're in our 30s. We're in our 30s now, which is it's crazy. But everybody has different priorities as we get older, right? So usually we'd be like, oh, what we doing today? Us three in particular, right? Then like, all right, you get lady, get married, things of that sort, have kids, working jobs, all these things, family getting older. Priorities shift. So that means relationship takes, a different space in your life. So
Yeah, nah, and even deeper. And again, y'all can tell me if y'all want to go. I noticed that we were getting older when I'm like, when these niggas, when did they get bald heads? Like, when did that happen? Like, when did we look? And for me, when the man boobs and all this stuff came, and like, I'm like, yo, what's going on? Like, why is all these different things happening? And being honest and transparent with myself and having the dad bod and all that. And I'm like, these little single freakers out here just. Rich was just. I wish I. Let me see. And this is why the.
So it's a clip. I want you to cut out this ball here. So you,
the
it's a shot clip.
Why you just going like that? We both got
Like,
hands
one day y'all didn't.
No, but it's a reality when you see like, shoot, I didn't even want to you see I kicked out of the workout thing. I'm like, you know what, y'all got it. Like, y'all got the work, y'all win, because I can't keep up in the way that I would like to keep up, and I don't want to discourage myself in that way. So did y'all have to go through a process with that, like your body changing, and then a lot of men don't speak on that, where it's like, yo, I was Rich in particular. I know you were the top, the what is it called, the curly top, and had all the design. But now it's like I have to accept this version of myself because of that. And again, if it's too deep, let me know. But I told you I won't go salacious, but we gonna have some vulnerable conversations.
Okay. I had to accept. I had to accept going bald when I realized I didn't want to be one of the guys that hold on too long. Once a good thing goes, it goes. Brother, it was my time. I was getting a cut every week. And that time I was doing more modeling or whatever. So I had to do angles and all that stuff. In my brain, I can't put my head, I can't, bend my head down, really. I don't want that light to hit that head. So, I said, let me get while the getting's good. So I'm waiting, got my hair cut off that I had, and that was that, brother. Now, instead of all those stops, I have one stop. Bald.
Bro, you had anything to add to that?
Yeah, it's the same. It's pretty much the same thing. Like, I think, all right, so it's gonna sound really, really weird. I think stuff like that, you do try to hold on to it, right? We know many of people who try to hold on need to let it go. So I think in a weird way, the grinding up, the roasting, all that stuff that goes on within this pot, it lets you know, like, come on, we're not about to hold on to something that ain't there. You know, we're not gonna love something that don't love us.
Okay.
So
Unrequited love.
yeah, when the hair started thinning, just focusing on the bald piece, I was just like, nah, I'm gonna just embrace this new journey. I think we both did it at 30, right?
Yeah, I
So
did.
it's kind of like found a like journey point. We
Now,
growing now.
now or never.
Yeah, so I didn't want to be someone that's holding on to something as small as a haircut, right? But it could like trigger it could foreshadow like your life in terms of like holding on to something or acknowledging that something needs to change, but you're just so afraid to embrace it. So I think it was like that. Like it was the love tap from everybody, and then once you did it, like everyone kind of supported it. I think
There's a freedom that comes with accepting yourself, right? On a deeper level. There's freedom that comes with really accepting who you are and realizing that you grow. And that was, I think, for both Bril and I, when we decided to go bald, that was a new evolution in life, both of us.
Now I never asked. I told y'all we're gonna have a real conversation. I never asked about that. But being in that same topic, man, Rich, you just said something that made me. I'm hopefully it come back to me. But y'all at the same time or around the same time, I think, bro, you did it first. But y'all also got up and just like transitioned into different cities. So we all were. So that's another part of like the grieving process of like my wife, y'all know Lisa, but my wife always talks about like not having friends and like how she yearns for them. And I'm like, yo, technically my friends are pen pals. Like I don't get to see them. They're in different cities. Like we're not going out and like catching up. Like we may text or may call or even like, you know, get on this certain like this, but I don't have that. All right, yo, my wife getting on my nerves, husband type of relationship, or yo, I don't, not that y'all wouldn't do this with my kids, but I would rather talk to a father too, like that's having those same, you know, complications with the mother of the children and parenting. And so having that, like y'all got up and was able to like move and be able to like spread your wings. And again, me being vulnerable, it's a little bit of jealousy in that because we were the world was ahead of us, and then now my world kind of, I don't want to say shrunk down, but it became a little bit more real than I realized than it was. And so talk about that transition and of taking that leap of being able to like just, I don't want to say start over, but start a journey somewhere else.
For me, I actually think I waited too long to do it. So I don't think I left till 27, 28. It was right before the pandemic hit. And for me, it was more like I'm not opposed to change. Even if you look at like career stuff I do and job changing. So for me, it was like just taking the leap. So I was okay, and I think that's everyone's comfortability in terms of taking a leap because I think Richard is saying that we both moved to cities, DC and Atlanta, and we didn't really have people in DC or Atlanta. So it was kind of like, hey, but then also like tying it back to the hair thing, it was kind of like, hey, let's just take this leap, try it out. Worst come to worst, you could always come back, right? Like you, and then like what you were saying, neither of us have kids. So worst come to worst, we could just turn around, come back and come to our mom's house, honestly, to an extent. So yeah, for me, it was just like, just take the leap, see what's out there. It was a move based on progression also. I felt it was a better place for career, like business growth, life, all of that. So it was more like just not being afraid and not being scared of, the unknown.
And Rich, you left in the middle of the pandemic, if I'm not, or it
Yeah,
just
I left.
started. So just
I
talk
left
about that
January.
transition.
I tell you, I tell the story to people every time I meet somebody. Oh, how long you been in Atlanta? I always say the same thing. I moved to Atlanta, I want to say the 2nd or 3rd of January. So kind of a few months before the pandemic. Anytime you move somewhere new, Bril, you can speak to this. You think, all right, it's a new city. I want to, see what's out here, right? See what's in just how the city moved. What's this, what's that? A couple months later, we was, facing a global pandemic, right? So for me, it was long. No, of course it's scary in general, right? Moving somewhere, doing something new. But then I think it was an added piece of isolation for myself, being in the pandemic and being kind of away from what I would consider like my core people. So
No, that's dope. And I y'all may not know this,
isolation
but
is dope.
huh?
Isolation is dope.
No, that's dope that y'all moved and was able to like just start over. And I was about to say that I live. So before, the hater in me would say like, yo, y'all need to get a girl like and settle down and like da 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 da. And even my wife saying the same thing, but I'm like, bro, y'all should just live y'all life. You got one life to live it to the fullest. I live through y'all niggas, and being able to have, this is my platform. I can say what I live through y'all niggas and be able to have those conversations. And be able to see, and even not settling, because now the world is at your fingertips, and being able to like spread your wings and be able to like fly wherever is dope. I know bro always talk about changing the job and even having that conversation. And Rich, I want to have a different one with you about jobs, but bro, talk about, and now I understand it a lot more now, being in my, I think further in my career, but not settling on a position. Because I think we get into these spaces where we find what people will call like, and I'll use myself for example. Family was almost disappointed in me when I left Red Cross. It was like, yo, you got a good organization you with, you can climb up the ladder. Like, why are you leaving Red Cross? And even up to I started the podcast, and Rich, this is the conversation me and you were gonna have after Bro answer it. Transitioning from the role that I just left with Blackman Hills, like, yo, you at the top of an organization, like, what are you doing? Like, why would you transition? So what, talk about that, about like not settling on a specific role and being able to always I don't want to say chase, because that seems like you're looking for something, but just look for that next level to get to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you necessarily wrong about saying chase, but in terms of like the job movement, it was more like a what's next thing. So even when I get jobs, it's always I'm always looking like strategically, so like maybe two or three steps down the line. I just don't feel now if a place is treating you right and you're getting everything you want and depending on the lifestyle you want, yeah, stay, be comfortable. I just wasn't really one for wanting comfortable. I wanted constant growth. I wanted constant financial security, constant nest eggs and stuff like that. Um, and then I educated myself a little bit just on the facts. Like the fact is you make more money leaving a job than you do getting a raise. It's nothing, it's not no feelings involved. It's a fact. I know people who've left companies because they wouldn't give them a raise and then come back, go to a new job, then come back and get the raise. So it's I don't know what it is, but just the annual raise versus leaving, it's night and day. So for me, I don't have any remorse or second thought about job hopping. Again, because the company essentially will fire you if they want to get rid of your role. Will fire you if they no longer need you, if you don't fit their requirements, if you don't fit their new vision for the next year. So I feel like you should do the same. If this company doesn't fit my new vision for this year, I believe if I no longer require their services, they pull back on developing stuff, or it's a pandemic, so now we can't develop you. Then I think I need to go get developed somewhere. So it's really more about like putting myself first. And then again, I would always tell people like make sure your moves are strategic so that you can job hop. If you get into somewhere that's a black hole or a role that's not really giving you anything, it's going to be harder to go to the next versus you get a role that can be a stepping stone.
Yo, that's a gem. I'll say a quick story. I remember, and I share this all the time, and Rich know what I'm about to say, but I remember where I was working at a sandwich shop, and I was talking to bro and about like, yo, man, I don't really like where I'm at. Like, I want to like, find more. He was like, to be honest with you, bro, I have a job, and you 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 don't want to be here where you at, but I'm looking harder for a job than you are, and you don't even have the place where you want to be. I'm cool kind of where I'm at. And so I use that as a strategy. So even you saying that, where you'll get more money looking at a new job than waiting for a raise, that's a gem that I think a lot of people could pull from. But I don't want to say pushback. Oh, I guess it would be a pushback. We were taught growing up and being able to go out into the career field that you're not supposed to job hop because it looks bad on your resume. To that you say what? Oh, did we lose him?
I think maybe y'all frozen. I can hear y'all, but
am I frozen? I think
you good
You
now.
need to stop hopping jobs.
Hold up, you were frozen. Go back, try it again.
I would say I would go against that past generation's thinking. So I've had Thanksgiving dinners where they
hold on, it's blanked out. What's going on? We can't hear you.
Speaking of real, brother, hey, the sister trying to shut a brother down.
They try, yeah. When you putting that real out there, the people trying to stop it. It's still not. It ain't say that.
Hey, he might need to leave and try to rejoin.
All right. Well, Rich, when we get bro back, the question I wanted to ask you as far as job search, and we had more personal conversations about, and I talked about it openly on the podcast about like my transitioning from my previous place of employment, how it was so tied up into my identity, and then of the struggles of like what I was going through with one job, and I thought I had it, and not really being able to like establish that early on, and how that you good, bro? We straight?
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right, I'm gonna let you finish out, but Rich, you know where I'm going with it, so just hold that in your mind.
Gotcha.
Nah, so to go against that older generation's thinking, I don't agree with them. I don't think you should take your past generations approach 100%. So I've had Thanksgiving conversations where my grandparents and aunts and all of them sat there and literally from my face said, you need to stop job hopping and blah, blah, blah. And respectfully, I would try to kick it to them like, it's a different day. It's not your time. It don't take us 50 years. I mean, pensions are pretty much gone, so ain't no pension. It don't take 6 months or whatever. It took 90 days to get insurance. You get it the day you walk in the door. So I try to break it down tactically, like what is the incentive to stay? You don't get more money. Your pension's gone. Your insurance starts wherever. It's not, if you're not afraid of change, I think you can do it. So it's an older way of thinking, but we're not in that time no more. And I think that past generation just doesn't understand where we are versus where they was. So it worked for them, but for us, I think it'll be counterintuitive to do that.
The last thing I'll say on that is, because you're in it and it has worked for you, how do you explain that to employers when they see the lack of, I don't want to say consistency, but they see the job hopping on a resume?
So if I'm asked, and to be honest with you, I'm not asked a lot. Yeah, you don't get asked a lot because I think a lot of the employers are our generation now, right? So we're coming up, so we're most of the people, so they kind of understand it. If I am asked, my answer usually revolves around development, right? The development was stagnant, the progression was stagnant. It's usually something around development to let them know. It kind of kicks it back to say like, oh, he wants to grow, he wants to develop. So maybe we do want him on here because he is a developer, a free thinker, and someone that can contribute.
That's good, because I start reevaluating. I think I told you they got me on a lease right now. That lease, they got me on a lease. It's almost time to get a new car, but I think that's a valuable like lesson to a lot of individuals, because you get complacent and wonder why you get stuck in these roles, and it causes depression, it causes all these different things, and it's like it's because you're not in that position anymore. So I appreciate you sharing that. Rich, we talked about it earlier a little bit about like the job transition and how that impacts you. I know one of the conversations we always have when it comes to that point, and I don't know why it comes up for both of us, but the almost not like that job process of not feeling like your worth is tied to the opportunity. So whereas like, wait, I know I'm good, I know like I offer something great, and it kind of dictates like your feelings toward like, and now you start questioning yourself in the doubt. So to that, like, what would you offer to someone that's experiencing that, whereas like, man, like I'm getting these doors shut in my face, but I know that I bring something to the table.
That one many times it's not personal, right? And when I'll use the example of me looking to move to Atlanta. So I was never one of those people that want to move somewhere without a job, because bills are real. So I said, constantly looking for different positions, right? I would get to a space where I would like the company would like me. I'll get maybe the first round interview done, and then it's that second piece around. Oh, hey, thank you for applying, but we chose to go another route. To me, that was real personal. Like, oh, you actually know me, you don't like me. Like, knowing this is tied to what and my brain is a concept of new life, right? It's a vehicle that allows me to get to a new area and kind of build their life out, right? That Bril was speaking to earlier, right? Taking a hold of an opportunity and letting it become like kind of your next stepping stone. So step one, realize not personal. Step 2 is really upskill, right? Whether you know how to do a job or not, start researching things around that job, around that industry that allows you to set, when you do get to that point, when you have those conversations, right? To Bril's point, but he may ask different questions about your work history you can speak to, you're always looking to grow, right? So for me, is realizing things aren't personal, upskill, and then you gotta just be, I don't want to cuss on your podcast, but you gotta be you gotta, really become an animal, lack better terms, right? For any opportunity you want, you gotta almost become, you gotta make it an irrational thing, right? Like, this has to happen. That's it. Like, you're gonna, as we know, you're gonna face barriers and things of that sort. But I really had to become, like, y'all been here, I got a whiteboard with all this random stuff you probably don't know what it is. Little messages I write to myself. I give y'all one, like, basically, as y'all know, I got a little sister about to go to school in next year, right? Going to college. I had to, in my brain, y'all know, like on the Last Dance documentary, Michael Jordan started telling himself random stuff, right? So it's the thing I put, yo, can you be called, on my whiteboard? And all that means is, you know how it was when you're in college, you want some extra money coming in, right?
Mm-hmm.
To my head, like, your little sister call you right now? If she needs you, she don't need me. But yeah, I mean, you know how it was when you was in school, you needed a couple dollars with her, like, yo, can you be called? So that became another passion point for me, right? So find things that motivate you, right? So step 1, don't take it personal. Step 2, upskill. Step 3, I would say, become a beast. And step 4 is trick yourself into success. So,
Nah, that's a key, and y'all always come at me. I know, bro, specifically, like I create my own enemies. When it comes to
you're real
stuff, and
good
it's
at that.
like,
You're
yo,
real good at that.
I create my, but
Mm-hmm.
it literally is a motivational tag. It's like, yo, you got beef with people that don't not even paying you no
Right.
mind, but I need that.
I don't know you.
And I think I got that from 50. 50 said he needed Jay-Z and Diddy because they were the top of the food chain, and he needed to feel like they were attacking him so that way he can like build himself up to be competitive. So I think that's where that came from. And Rich, you bring up an important point, that topic that I wanted to go into. And again, so as y'all can see, maybe y'all can't tell from the dynamics, Bril and Rich are two different friends for me, and Bril is more straight to the point, and I'll bring up a clip about from him from his old podcast. And me and Rich usually have like bro's not man of many words, it's action. Like, all right, so what are we gonna do about it? Like, how are we gonna get this? And Rich will kind of sit down and like reason out. Bro wants steps, tactics, like how we executing these things, and which is a beautiful art to it. And so one of the things, bro, that you don't probably know, but me and Rich talked about earlier this year, was my identity was so tied up into Black Man Hill. I was scared to break away from Black Man Hill because I'm like, who mess with me for me, and who mess with me because the organization is a big organization. And so it caused a different depression. And even Lisa was looking at me, it's like, yo, it's a job, like move on, as opposed to like, and I feel like that y'all wanting the same in that shit. It's like, yo, it's a job. Just get another one and you be straight. And it's more so like it was more of a difficult way with that. And so the question in that is, what is your identity attached to, if you had to ask yourself that question?
Me, that's me.
It's me.
I wouldn't attach my identity to my career as much. And I don't know if this is going to answer your question good enough, but I just think I am I do get that I might be slightly a mystery, allegedly. I don't know what think. But I think it's more people outside that don't know you, of course, but then again, I probably don't let people in, so there's that too. So like I wouldn't put I would put my identity to a tactical, problem solving, critical thinking grower. I just made it up on the spot too.
That was really good.
In the sense, I think it hit everything we kind of talked about earlier. Like I'll do what I need to do to grow and go to the next level. I'll, like you said, tactically kind of think things out. I don't talk too much about my career too much, and I think you told me before that I need to do more. But I just don't, because I don't, and I don't, and it might be wrong. It might be, I don't know, maybe I would be farther along if I did, but I just don't want that to be me. I'm more who I am in terms of like, I guess what son, grandson, friend, jokester, whatever you want to call it. I like that as a part of my life for who I am versus I'm a title here.
Mm.
I think DC might have enhanced that a little bit more of not wanting to do it, because I see it so much down here where like people's identity is tied up into what they are, and they, respectfully they're not a person. Like they're almost a robot, and they lack personality. They lack common sense. They lack interpersonal skills. They are just whatever they do. And I learned from other people, right? Smart people learn from other people. So I learned from that. So I like my identity to be more about probably my traits and who I am, kind of like we touched on throughout this call.
That's he bring up an important point that I had to relearn. I think it was always there. I had to relearn, and even having conversations with Rich and like breaking down those barriers of like, yo, this is not who you are. Like, so you tied so much up into this, like, and it's not who you are as an individual. And with Bro, and I think he should speak a lot more, because I think he has a lot to offer. He's not a man of many words, but he has a lot of value that he can offer to individuals, but he just very is militant. It's like, all right, y'all better get on. Like, you know how you got the little kid, and it's like, you better, the bus is moving, the train moving. If you don't hop on, then you're just gonna get left. This is where I'm going.
Basically.
Militant.
Rich, how about you? What do you think your identity is attached to?
I'll agree with everybody. Never tie your identity to a job. So anytime they can, they can let you go, then who are you, right? For me, as I get a little older, right? Me young, I say I tie my identity to being a person of service, right? Whether it's the family, the friends, even to myself, right? I want to be somebody that people can turn to, if they need to. Never want to tie myself to any job, because I know when I was looking for a job prior to the position I'm in now, when I was doing that, I wanted to be this. I wanted a title so bad. The title is nothing but that, a title that can be taken away at any time. So I would tie my identity to a person of service.
No, you speak facts. I just was asking bro maybe a month or so ago, like, what's the C-suite? Like, what that stand for? And he was like, yo, they just be putting that in there so that they can have like a bigger title than what they actually do, and trying to understand that. So to your point, Rich, like being that, but I'll offer some pushback to you, Rich, just because that's me, or that's what I identified with like I wanted to be a person of service. But what if you can no longer serve? Like, what if you are no longer, what if you no longer have the ability to serve, like physical, mentally, emotionally? Like, what if the opportunity that you had that was utilized, Black Hill was that for me, where I was using that to serve, is now taken away, or you don't feel that it's the path for you anymore? How do you reshape your identity in that servitude? That was good. Ooh, Diane Sawyer's.
Okay. Well, if I can't be of any help in any of those spaces, that's something I gotta think about. I don't know, right? Because I pride myself on being someone people, when they need help or want to talk about something. Y'all know I dip in and out. Y'all hear from me, y'all don't, but people need me. I feel like I'm somebody people can talk to, or whether it's provide a physical service, right? But that's something different I want to think about. I don't know what I want to tie my identity to, without being of service to outward, right? Because part of that service is to service in myself. I'm making sure my cup is full so that I can pour from the access, right? So that's something I want to think about a little more.
Now, and it's a Coach Carter question. Remember, he kept asking you like, what's your deepest fear, and they couldn't answer it. So that's something I've been struggling to answer now. Like, I'm trying to figure it out, because so long I was the mental health guy, or so long I was this guy, and it's like that person of me wants to evolve, and I don't know what I am if I'm not that individual anymore, and how that shapes me as I grow. And I'm still trying to figure that out. But I want to say the entrepreneur or the guy in me wants to just go out there and do it, but I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing at this point and trying to figure all of that out in the same instant. So that's again, that was me pulling from you all, trying to figure out like, all right, how do you really reshape and develop that again? Because it can plague on your confidence in a way too. Y'all both mentioned something. Rich, you mentioned about being like this person that your little sister can call, and then bro, you said being that individual that with family and being like people knowing you in that capacity. One of the things that is becoming more realistic as we grow older is the fact that we are becoming the elder statesman. And we are I'm Uncle Junior, I'm the rich uncle now, or I'm the one you gotta take your grandma somewhere, Bril, or Rich, you are now the person that your little sister is like, yo, I need this to help me with this. There's no rule book on that. It's just someone, it just happens after a while, and then you
That is
start
so
to
fast.
and I'm realizing that when I don't want to say I'm comfortable, like that's also not grieving, but it's a word I'm looking for where it's like, yo, I became an elder statesman and I don't even know that, and I didn't even notice it when it happened. So how do y'all feel becoming those elder statesmen, especially when we talk about like men not really being around and they dealing with their own different things, but now you're being the person that has to step up and become that?
I don't know when it happens, but it happens. I mean, we spoke about a little earlier, right? We all kind of followed each other turning 30, but we had talks with people about when you turn 30, your mindset shifts a little bit, right? And we all kind of went through that mindset shift. I don't know if it happened around that time or not. I know I was with my cousin this weekend, and long story short, we wound up giving advice to a table of 20 somethings, right? I had the question, hey, yo, Ed, he was like 24. You're like, yo,
Go ahead.
right, yo.
Unk.
Like leaned in like like really wanted, like I had to pull that valuable advice from somewhere. I said, it's 24 years old. Like, what would you tell your 24-year-old self? I'm like, I gotta start thinking back. 24 years is almost 8 years now for me. So I'm like, okay. Well, 8 years now for me. I'm like, damn. And then, you want to lean into the most important thing is, the idea of becoming real self-aware, right? I know at 24, none of us were as self-aware as we are now, right? And, to that point, knowing that one day we'll become these elder statesmen, right? We transition from being the youngest to the middle, youngest at the party or whatever, right? So it's like really just preparing for that. I think I said this to myself at the top of the year. I said, ask God to keep me steady in the peaks as well as the valleys, right? Because we know as we get older, things change, right? Things happen. And as somebody who identifies as being somebody of service or just somebody people can come to, I want to make sure as we know, men, we gotta be kind of some of the most stable people, right? We don't get a lot of chance to have a bad day, really, right? People create spaces for that, but at the end of the day, Reggie, I'll use you as an example. You can be sick a couple days, but on day 3, everybody starts looking around the house looking to see what daddy gonna hunt, right? Because people got to eat. So, it's the transition happens quickly. I will say that.
Well, I think bro dealing with Coach right now.
Nah, all right, so yeah, on my end, I do agree a lot with what Rich said. I think it just pops up. You don't really know what it is. I don't think as you're going through it, you start to think like, oh, I'm old, I'm getting older, so it's that time. I think other people make you aware of it. So kind of navigating it, I think like I can't front, I do get frustrated with it because I think because at least for me, because like I'm 32 and I'm still just me and a damn dog. I don't want to be responsible. Like, why can't I just do my thing, get my thing done?
That was the game I know.
Is that balance of if you are the one with the means, whether it's knowledge, whether it's emotions or whatever you got the means of, being able to give that back, I guess, so to speak, is your unofficial duty, right, to those that you deem loved ones or whatever. So I do agree, like it's just a balance of doing that while still keeping yourself sane. and not doing too much. Because no one's going to know like when to stop asking you for stuff or when to start coming to you. So I think it's just, it was a thing, just like tying it back to the beginning of the call, just like, embracing our physical issues. With hair. Let me clear that up with hair. It's like that, kind of embracing that change, and being willing to jump off that ledge, and then just having confidence that you'll be able to fly or that you'll land on your feet.
Yeah, bro, that's something. So I was telling Lisa that I was talking to y'all, and one of the questions I get, because I know she's gonna listen to it, but one of the questions she wanted me to ask, or one of the topics we were discussing, is how do y'all deal with? And bro, you kind of answered it, so if you want to add more, you can. But how do y'all deal with people saying, like, almost looking at, because y'all made different decisions and choices in life, like, oh, they ain't got no responsibility, it's just them, like they're able to move around and do certain things. Like, how do y'all handle that, being that person within your family, whereas some people, they made different choices and decisions, and it's almost like, I want to be respectful as possible, like their emergencies, their problems become yours because they made certain decisions.
Yeah, I think you almost got to respectfully be a little bit disrespectful.
Ooh.
In the sense of, like you just said, like, that's your problem. Like, I'll help where I can, but
it's the straight to the point person I told you.
Even if, like, somebody comes to me, even if I'm going to do something, it's still at the end of the day your problem. So I'm not going to do anything that probably compromises me too much, and compromise, depending on how you want to put it. So I do think it is boundaries that needs to be set. You need to say no from time to time. Like, I know sometimes I just say no just to say it, even if I got it, just so it's not like a current, like, even if it's, come do something, I'm just like, no. Because like you said, if like people who ask and they're just worried about their ask, whether it's emotional, physical, whatever they're asking you for, but they don't understand or look or think how many other people are doing it. They're just looking at themselves. So you could easily get burned out if you do that. So I think like you said, you need to respectfully kind of, and you don't have to say it out your mouth, but you kind of respectfully have to be a little bit disrespectful, in the sense of, like, I made these decisions to get here. You made your decisions to go there. I'm not required to cover up for you. If I want to, fine, but it's not a requirement. So that needs to be understood, that it's not a requirement. It's a want or a help.
Now, Rich, you are on the servitude side, but you also you made different decisions.
Right.
So how do you manage and really get past that portion? Because you want to help people, but sometimes it's like that you got to tell them no so they can help themselves.
Look, I'm saying, say two things. How many rappers we know didn't say you got to help yourself before you can help anybody else? On the plane, they say, make sure you good before you go service to somebody else, right? We cannot help anybody. We first help ourselves, and that's that. Be of service, but like to Bril's point, you got to have boundaries, right? If not, you wind up, helping somebody so much that you start lacking where you at, right? Who can you turn to? Because I most times the people that are reaching out to you, once they get what they want from you, they don't really, hit you back, right? Or whether it's financial, physical, emotional, mental, right? Most times people get what they want to get, and then they be out. That's why it's important to have boundaries, right? Sometimes you got to be a little hard to contact, because people, sometimes you need to set those boundaries for people,
I warmed them up, audience. Now it's time to get into the next part of the podcast. I warmed them up. So there's been a lot of chatter, and I think I just titled this section the relationship wars. And I'll go in with an easy one that I know y'all feel more comfortable talking about. I feel like, and again, I'm in a relationship, married or whatever the case may be, but when these topics come up, I always wonder what y'all think about certain things, because y'all out there in the field and y'all dating, when y'all are finding a spouse. And so
the field,
we talked about, or we didn't talk about, there was a big discussion about who should pay for what, and what's the, I won't say requirements, but the code of ethics, for lack of a better word, of men being men and paying for everything. How do you all feel with that first? And then I'll ask, based off your answer, other questions if depending on what you answer.
Who gonna go first? You wanna go, Richard?
I'll go. You mean like
There's an expectations out there. So I'll give you an example. So when me and Lisa was going through it one time, I'm like, all right, man, I'm about to start dating. And I was talking to Dre about it. And Dre was like, yo, be careful if you come out here because these women will use you for lunch and not call you back. Like they'll get you to bring them food, they'll get you to do all these different things, and then you won't hear from them. And so that was an example of like, all right, how do you really date with a woman? Because that's chivalry. Like, all right, I gotta, pay for meals or do whatever. But he's like, no, you're their lunch. They're gonna have somebody else's dinner. Like you're the next, meal for the day. And so how do you navigate, there we go, chivalry with city girl mentality? There we go. That's a better return.
okay. That is a lot. I think like you gotta have boundaries, man. Like, I don't know. Nobody want to get used. Nobody want to use anybody. I think people need to date who they like and stop dating people just for a look. That makes sense, right? I think many times people go after people that probably have no real interest in them, right? Other than they want them to Dre's point, right? Just for lunch, right? I'm at the age now, you're looking to build, right? Not just looking to just be aimless out here.
Bro.
I'm gonna say so yes, that's very, very real, especially I think it might be a little prevalent in our areas, right? DC and Atlanta. I think
he said, oh
yeah, like it's hot out here. I think first of all, you shouldn't lead with money. So in terms of when I'm dating, I don't lead with money at all. I borderline even tell or get into specifics of like how I make a living or anything like that. My engagements or first interactions with folks is usually more on a personal level, like who are you and then who am I? Mm-hmm. So I think that helps to an extent, right? Because typically, like you said, Reggie, the folks who just want to use you, that's what they want to do. So they're coming here to use you. So if they can't use you, it'll kind of fizzle out off the rip. Now, of course, this doesn't happen all the time, but I think that is a good mechanism to kind of avoid some of that. I do believe in being chivalrous, right? But I don't think chivalry should be tied to money. Chivalry is more about right. It's almost like Richard Act service, almost more just taking care of someone. So like the doors, walking down the street, the thoughts, the conversation, stuff like that. And I think if you pay attention to someone, you can avoid a lot of that. So if you have the conversations, if you talk about things, like I'll give an example.
That's what I wanted.
And I'm trying to think of how I could word it so that they don't like see it. And like
you were dating an individual. We're gonna walk through it.
So I got it's like a couple of things. Like I remember one time I've had somebody say, I think we like met somewhere, went to lunch, maybe like the next day, and the following day we was like out somewhere, and randomly through talking, she asked me, "Oh, what do you give people for Valentine's Day? What gifts do you give for Valentine's Day?" It was April. She still got me get through. So I was like, "Huh?" But that was a question, and I was like, "Huh." So it kind of clicked. Okay, and then that red flag was perfect. Like went out because it was chill. It was chill. We was just outside, wasn't doing that. Had time to talk. It was like talking and walking. So that told me like, oh, I mean, maybe she's not a bad person, but she might be one. Some women are like this. So for whatever reason, maybe they're like, if I'm gonna get into something that my time wastes, I'm at least get a couple hours or something. So like that was an example where I kind of side eye, and then later down the line, it all came out like within a couple weeks later. So I think if you pay attention and you don't lead with your money, I think if you're a dude, you lead with your money and somebody milk you, that's your fault. Because this is what you came with. This is what you brought. So give me what you bought. I just think it's very, very relevant out here. So I think it has a lot to do with knowing yourself, and if tying it back to mental health, just to keep it on your radar. I think a lot of, and I'm just not the best dudes and not like that, but I think a lot of people don't really know themselves. So they might either get a job and come into money, and they don't know how to talk, they don't know how to joke, they don't know how to be humorous. They just got a couple dollars. So to cover up all of that insecurity, they'll use that. So that's why I would say, like, maybe know yourself a little bit better, get through your insecurities, and just pay attention. Like, sometimes these complicated topics really come down to somewhere. Pay attention, listen to what people say, and I think you'll be good. See, I ain't say too mean. That was good.
Nah, that was actually a great example. I'm happy you provided that. That's what I'd be wanting, just having real life examples. Rich, Bril brought up an important point, and I already know some of your stances on this, but I want to give you the opportunity to like reshape it in a way that is more malleable to the people that are listening, because there's young boys, like how you said you was giving game. One of my guys, academics, and we talk about like the fresh and fit guys, and I already know how Rich feel about it, but I think the essence of what they are attempting to say, they are the guys that have been used, or they the guys that have been looked over, or they are the guys that, they could never get the pretty girl, and so they're trying to teach what men to look out for. I think at the essence anyway. And of course they got they got their whatever, but that's why I kind of pay attention to some of the things that they do. The question within that to you is, do you think there is a missing void of what a man's responsibility is within relationships with women and how you interact with them? Because now it's coming off that as men hate women, where I think in actuality they're just trying to learn how to deal with them. I bodied that, boy. Y'all gotta give me an award.
You need just some sound effects in the back, huh?
I do. I got my machine. My babe got it for me for yeah, I got it. I gotta hook it up. Next time y'all come, we gonna have them ready.
All right. I do think, to your point, I mean, there are examples of what that healthy black love, healthy love, right? Everybody loves everybody. Healthy love looks like. I think, as humans, we are designed to look at the car crash, right? We focus on negativity a lot. That's kind of our natural setup. And I think when people like the podcast you mentioned, whatever, right? I guess somebody
he won't dignify them with a name the people like you mentioned.
I mean, like, cause it ain't nothing I get down with, whatever. I think it's whatever. But there's some people that's speaking to some people, right? Reason why people watch Fox News or whatever, or CNN or whatever. People listen to people that are restating what they are thinking, right?
They have huge platforms for a reason. There's a lot of young brothers that's like yearning for that type of information.
Yeah, man. I just think, there are other options out there. That's all. To define what you're interested in, right? Or it's really important. They say in any space you want to go out and find information that you may not necessarily agree with. That's how you expand, right? You don't want to just stay in the same space. Listen to the same regurgitated topics, the same 3 topics. That's on social media today, right? I think it's important to go out and research and live life, mess up and try again and see what works for you, versus just listening to some folks on the internet that, to your point, have been hurt by people and choose to operate in that hurt, being shocking and jarring on social media, right? So
they are a space haven for like someone like myself. So even like our recent trip to DC, Lisa was like, "Oh, I got the short one." Like she seen us all next. I got the short one. So, but can you imagine like being in that space where you're not the one that all the girls look at and trying to navigate? Like I actually got to go, to your point, Rich, hunt earlier, like I gotta go hunt and not knowing what tools I need to hunt. And so now I'm like in a space, we already talked about the lack of fatherhoods, and the lack of presence in that manner, where you're trying to figure out, like, how do I build these relationships, and I don't know where to start from. And so I think that's to the point of why I also wanted to have y'all on these conversations, is to bring that information out in a malleable way, because there's some seed to what they're saying, but it needs to be articulated in a way. Because I always was like, all right, y'all got this, girl, y'all got I want to use a term and I'm trying to be respectful, but there was a level to it where, and I don't want to say it, I talked to Lisa about it.
Don't say it.
I ain't gonna say it, but there was a level, and I'm like, all right, those Reds girls right there. Those are red. Those are Reds girls. But to that point, that can harbor, what do you call that? You can harbor anger to the ones that you probably wanted but couldn't get because you didn't feel like they were on your level. And to your point, Rich, it creates a fear of anxiety of not even wanting to go out there and fail, because you never knew what that takes and how that's going to feel to be rejected. So I just wanted to bring that into this.
It's levels to life.
Oh, excuse me, big dog.
No, I'm seeing your point. I ain't gonna never say what you said. But yeah, and sometimes, some of those levels are self-perceived, right?
Ooh.
Most time the game is made up. A lot of stuff is made up. You just allow ourselves to land into these rules. This, man, to Bril's point. Bril's point, develop personality. Don't focus on your money. Don't focus on whatever. Are you you know yourself, right? It's so important.
So the last thing I'll add to that, trying to be very respectful to that, and I only got 1 or 2 more questions. It's been a great conversation, by the way. See, I told you I was gonna take it a different way, y'all. I feel like, and now again, I always use myself as an example. I feel like once, and bro, this is probably more to you than it is to Rich, so I'll let you go first. I feel like I can't think of no other better term. There's an attack on masculinity. And I feel like once I got involved in the mental health space, I lost a little bit of masculinity, becoming vulnerable, if that makes sense, where I lost that ability. I lost that dog, Rich, like that dog that you said, that hunt, that go out there and eat, because I was trying to get more in tune with emotions and having conversations. Where when we talk about having conversations like this, I think there are masculine conversations missing, where there is me and Lisa raise our kids differently, and I respect what she does, which can make them a lot vulnerable, but she now has gained a greater appreciation for what I bring as a father, with that with the militant style of like giving those tactics and things of that nature. So the question within all that, bro, is, do you feel like now that everybody's having these mental health conversations and sharing your feelings and becoming vulnerable, that masculinity is getting lost within that?
No. So no, to answer the question, I don't think it is. I think it's okay. It's cool to be in tune. Again, tying back, be in tune with yourself, understand who you are. And even that, like, I think it's a narrative where, like, every woman is like, oh, I want the alpha male. I think that's the term, right? I hate all these fucking terms, but anyway, I hate all these terms. But yeah, they say that, but honestly, there's, I think it's alpha, beta, sigma, whatever, the whole scale. But there's nothing wrong with other males. Like, there's good and bad traits to an alpha. There's good and bad traits to a beta. There's good and bad traits to a sigma. It doesn't mean like you're not a protector or anything like that. Like sometimes you can even think depending on how you look at it, the alpha is the one that's kind of, you see, you hear, all that. But a lot of times in the rooms, the one that's kind of chill, that's the one who really getting it. That's the one who really like, you know what I mean? They going to handle what they need to handle and all that. So I do think, no, it's not a problem to get into it. I do think it's balanced. I think the narrative is that this type of man is not fit to be a king or a woman. Like, you know what I mean? And I think that's more the problem, that there's a specific type of man that works for everyone. And I don't think that that's the case. I do think it's a balance. And I do think we should, I mean, even, me, like I've done the therapy thing. Y'all laughed at me.
Proud of you.
But even me, like I actually do think I might have a little bit of like an emotional issue. Here, I'll give you a soundbite. Rich, you kind of know about this already.
Clip it up. Editors, clip this.
So Gab, our homie Gab. So last night I was out and me and my homie got robbed. And Gab was like, yo, you acting like nothing's wrong. And I kind of was just like, I mean, it happened. We good. And she's like, hey, something's wrong with you. I'm about to find you a therapist. So like that's a balance. Like maybe I still need to work from, not like addressing it.
You know how much anger just came into me? Wait, what happened? Like y'all hearing this real. Like, what happened? You got robbed.
Yeah, it was like 3 dudes. They pulled guns. It was like, run your pockets.
Recently?
Yeah, like 12 last night, 12:30. We was leaving like a spot. And yeah. So yeah, that's what I mean. Like to y'all, I know y'all saying like that, but I'm kind of like, look, it happened. We got up out of there. It kind of is what it is. So maybe I need to get the spectrum. So this ties back to your point of no, being vulnerable or emotional isn't a problem. I think you got to find a balance that works for you and what works for you. So that's why I use myself as an example. As like, maybe I should be more affected. Or maybe I just haven't yet. Maybe I'm in the process or something. But for me, it was more like on the black and white, like it happened. We got up out of there. So
I'm glad that y'all good. It's fucked up that happened. Y'all definitely. Yeah, to your point, right? Saying that it happened a little while ago. So you're saying you don't know if you processed it yet, right? But even that growth and self-awareness to even say like, yo, is there something wrong with me versus, my way is the highway. I'm good. So they got what they got, but I'm good. So it is what it is. But, it's so important to be self-aware, right? It's happy you good though, dog. Too much wild shit happening out here anyway. So like, definitely happy you good, cuz.
Well, Rich, you got to answer the question, but I'm following us out live, y'all. If y'all can't realize that now is making me want to like drive somewhere and like I can't do nothing. But was it on the excursion or was it at home base? Like where did it happen? I don't know if you were. Was it in the city?
It was literally yesterday. We was leaving the spot in DC.
Oh.
So yeah, literally was last night.
All right, we got to talk later. I got to run and produce a show. I got to get back in my host hat. Richard, how do you feel about like the loss of masculinity, or feeling like there's an attack on masculinity, or whatever the case may be?
All right, we should talk about that later, bro. Messed up now. Now I want to discuss everything, but
I do want to unpack, but this is why y'all will be back in another quarter when he has time. All those different things we'll discuss. Like, yo, you had me on live on air with it, and then I didn't get a chance to unpack it. But go ahead, Rich.
Hot 9 on your show,
right?
Might have been a bad, no pun intended.
But man, I do think that the idea of masculinity is very linear right now, right? When there's never been that. You got men that's artists that, is going to die protecting their family, right? That mean they masculine, right? Masculinity itself is a spectrum, right? And I think that too many times we focus on one type of man, right? To Bril's point, that man is out front all the time, ain't the biggest, baddest one all the time. You know what I mean? So I think men just need to do a better job rather, of learning themselves, whether that's going to therapy, whether that's, I try to journal. I don't know if y'all journal. I tried to journal a couple of times. It's not a consistent thing for me. My thing really is the gym. That's a place for me to unpack and kind of work things that are going out mentally if I'm not in therapy at the moment. But I don't think it's a real attack on masculinity. I think it's a focal point, right? Because everybody can share their opinion about the same topic, and people want to focus on that right now. But I honestly don't think it's an attack on masculinity, you know.
No, that's again, that's inner thoughts and consuming those different things. Bro got my brain messed up, but we gonna rock with it. Like we gonna rock with it because I was gonna ask a different question, which I'll ask in our next conversation. And I'm not even gonna pull up the clips, but I will end off on a high note, or maybe not. Hopefully it is. Are you who you wanted to be when you grew up?
Are you who you wanted to be when you grew up? I don't think I knew who I wanted to be. I think back then, I think you just live for like the moment or next week, but you don't necessarily. You know what? I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna change that. I'm gonna say no because I think back then, I think most of us thought by 32. Oh, you knew where I was going with this. Set me up, huh? By 32, we would be family, kids, the whole 9 yards. So in that sense, I would say no, because I thought that would have been, the marriage, the kids, white picket fence, all that little stupid stuff would have been done by now, or I would have had that. And then now at 32, dating, right? So I guess from that sense, no, but from more of a, I don't know, like more of a tactical or career, or whatever would do a life stance.
Militant.
I don't think I knew. Shut up. I don't think I knew exactly what I wanted. I kind of looked at the avenues I was going on and just made the best decision for the best outcome.
So even career wise, like for example, I know my high school. What do you call that? What's the thing you need to write to get into college? Whatever that thing is, the essay. The college admissions essay. And one of the things I always said was like I wanted to own my own business, entrepreneur, whatever the case may be. So I have a version of that, but it's not the exact version. So do you have a version of what your future was going to look like when you first started out? I think that was probably a better way to ask that question.
I think I did know the business route going into college. But I think when I went in, I think we both went in the same, going for marketing. And then that's where like life stuff came in, and this is where like tying it all the way back to like the job hop stuff like that, knowing what you want. Marketing for me, it didn't give the reward I wanted for the amount of work. So that's why I kind of pivoted and stuff like that. So I guess a little bit, yeah, I kind of was in the space. I did know business, but I just always thought it'd be marketing, where now I'm more strategy and oversight.
Operational. What about you, Rich?
No. I think thought I thought what 10 years ago, I thought 30 was old, right? I thought 30 was like, yo, that's ancient. Now, youngish, right? And I'm not what I thought, marriage and kids and dog. I don't got no dog yet. You know what I mean? So like marriage, children, and I had different ideas of what I wanted to do college-wise, right? I went to school for political science. At one point I wanted to be a lawyer, and then became disillusioned with that idea. And I always wanted to be of service to people. I wouldn't say I'm in a career I enjoy right now, but I do feel I still got some more growing and doing. Whatever that picture of what things are supposed to look like is, for me, is forever changing and evolving, right?
So going back to the beginning, was that the beginning, or like having your identity tied to what is your identity attached to? Because it was evolving. Y'all can tell me, because I'm still trying to figure it out. Because it's evolving or it changed. Rich, I know you're big on like not dying full of potential. Because it didn't go the way that you wanted it to go. Do you feel like? So the question I was going to ask before Bro dropped the bombshells is coming to terms with mortality.
Okay.
And
yeah. Right.
Yep.
What?
And so for
Man.
me,
It's
I'm
damn
like,
near knowing people for like more than 5, 6 years because you get like really dark jokes.
Crazy follow up.
so that I'm trying, and I'm struggling to navigate around it and ask the question, but I'm gonna roll with it because of our identity and knowing that, man, this didn't go the path that I didn't go to. I'm starting to come terms with like, yo, we're all going to not be here anymore. And I think the car accident taught me that. But knowing that, it's like, all right, how do I utilize the time that I'm here in a way that's efficient enough? If I don't get everything I want to do done, I got enough done to be satisfied with my life. So do you feel like that, if that is the question?
No.
Well, because you said you make peace with just being of service. You of service every day, just calling the mom and check on them. You get what I mean? So if all you did was call your mom and check on them for yo, would you be okay with that?
No.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't. No. No. Still things I do need to do and ask myself that question, am I okay with how things are going? Sometimes I say yes, sometimes I say no. I know I still have some work to do. So I'm not okay with, hopefully we all got more summers ahead of us than behind us. And, we find the way to use that time wisely. So we're not, full of regret, when our number is called, right?
And Bril, I'll ask it differently for you because you're the strategy and you've been tactical and you've been able to like basically get everything that you set your mind to accomplish in the terms of the professional career path. Do you feel like you are coming to terms with like, because you didn't even have the like, all right, I want to be this. You pivoted once you found it out and it was like, all right, I'm here with it. And I got what I set my terms out to. Oh, I got one for you, bro. Bro, let me run it back. I know for a long time, early on in our career or early on in your career, you wanted to get the Comcast job, and that never actualized for you. Do you feel comfortable knowing that you were never able to get it?
Yeah, I'm good with it now. At the time, and I'm tying this to the whole question. At the time, yeah, I wanted something, but I'm okay with. I could come to terms and accept like things change, and then when I look back on it, I'm like, oh no, it was as Rich say, maybe it's like what's it, small pond or small pond
Big
thinking.
fish,
Like,
big
it
fish.
was so much more than that, and I didn't like. I think it was like because the Philly, the big building, and all that stuff. Um, but it's like so much more out here in terms of if you want to work for a certain spot. So no, I come to terms with it, and then even with like where I'm at, like no, I don't really, I'm not like, I don't think I got everything I wanted, or have achieved
It's the
everything.
reverse of that. Are you comfortable with everything you gotten so far?
No,
Like if that.
so no. So no, to answer your question, and I almost think that might be a little bit of a problem. And it's that sense of like always wanting more, so you never satisfied.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, so no, I'm not comfortable with what I got, but I can come to terms with things. Like I'm okay to and accept what has happened or what has not happened. If I want to change it, I need to change it.
Rich, to Bro's point, that's where um that's the answer that I won't say looking for, but I've come to terms with myself where I know it's all these different things that I wanted to do and accomplish and achieve. But if I had to come to terms with the things that I've already gotten, I'm happy with that. Just because of it could have went a lot of different ways and would have gone too many different ways. And Rich done saved me from getting expelled from school, and like bro done saved me from different things. And so being as though I know it could have went to these different terms, I'm okay with how everything is happening and bringing it to a place of peace and being comfortable with that. And you never dying on full potential. So I'm going to save the rest of the things that I had because again, this is an ongoing conversation. And I want to be able to have some other things. Like there was a few things that you all talked about in your previous interviews, and I may even be able to pull something from our last group conversation. So I'm gonna curate another conversation. So for audience, y'all will still hear them in the future if I can get them tied down to a schedule is hard. Everybody got busy, you know, schedules nowadays. So I appreciate you gentlemen for coming on and blessing me with the conversation. And I appreciate you, bro, because you are the last person that I expected to share examples. And hopefully I could get Rich to be a little bit more comfortable as well to share some personal example, because I think it helps resonate with the audience. And on that note, please share, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and leave me a review, man. It don't cost nothing. It's free, and that's the best way you could support the podcast. I'm still looking for a way to end these things out, but until next time, I appreciate you all. Deuces.